one of the biggest things that I did a video on again about the lost labyrinth of Egypt. Did you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the labyrinth is, for people that haven't heard of the labyrinth, it was one of the ancient wonders of the world. Like, this was described by Herodotus and Pliny the Elder and Strabo and all these historical figures that saw it.
The bulldozer's blade bit into the hilltop, Papura Hill, northwest of Castelli, Crete, June 2024. The crew was clearing ground for a radar system, new international airport, standard construction work, move earth, install equipment, get paid. The machine lurched, hit something solid. The operator killed the engine, climbed down, looked at what he'd just exposed. Stone, not bedrock. Worked stone, placed stone, arranged in a perfect curve. He called his supervisor. The supervisor called the site manager. The site manager called the Ministry of Culture. And within 48 hours, construction stopped. Because what they'd uncovered wasn't a rock. It wasn't a foundation. It was something that shouldn't exist. A labyrinth. An actual, physical, 4,000-year-old labyrinth. On the island of Crete. The same island where Greek mythology says Daedalus built a maze to trap the Minotaur. For 3,000 years, scholars dismissed the labyrinth as pure fiction. A story, a metaphor, the myth of Theseus and the beast with the bull's head wandering an impossible maze. But the bulldozer just proved them wrong. The discovery didn't happen slowly, it happened all at once. As soon as the first ring of stone was exposed, the excavators knew they had something unprecedented. They brought in archaeologists from the Ephrate of Antiquities of Heraklion. Dr. Danai Kantopodi led the initial survey. What she saw stopped her cold. The structure spans 48 meters in diameter. That's 157 feet, about half the length of a football field. It covers 1,800 square meters of hilltop. The complex sits at the summit of Papura Hill, 494 meters above sea level, an elevation that commands a view of the entire plain of Heraklion. You can see for miles in every direction. The design is circular, 8 concentric stone rings. Each ring averages 1.4 meters thick, about 4.6 feet. The surviving walls reach heights of 1.7 meters, over 5 feet tall. And these are the eroded heights, after 4,000 years of weathering. The original structure would have been much taller. At the center sits Zone A, a circular building 15 meters in diameter, about 50 feet across, divided into 4 quadrants by radial walls. Think of a pie sliced into quarters. Surrounding Zone A is Zone B, a ring of smaller interconnected spaces. Radial walls intersect the concentric circles, creating chambers. Narrow openings connect these rooms, passageways, corridors. You enter one chamber and it leads to another, and another, a labyrinth. The layout is intentional. The stone placement is precise. The geometry is sophisticated. This wasn't a random pile of rocks. It was engineered, planned, built by people with advanced architectural knowledge. Dr. Kostas Paskalidis, president of the Association of Greek Archaeologists, put it plainly. This is one of the most important archaeological finds of the 21st century for the prehistoric Aegean. But here's the catch. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. In Crete, in Greece, anywhere in the Aegean. The Minoans built palaces, Knossos, Phaistos, Malia, Zakros. These are sprawling complexes. Rectangular layouts, multi-story buildings, central courtyards, grand staircases, elaborate frescoes, storage magazines filled with giant clay jars. The architecture is distinctive, instantly recognizable. The Papura structure looks nothing like a Minoan palace. It's circular. Minoan palaces are rectangular. It's concentric. Minoan palaces radiate from a central court. It's on a hilltop. Minoan palaces sit in valleys near water. It's isolated. Minoan palaces anchor urban centers. Dr. Kantopodi was direct about the problem. The shape and labyrinthine architectural layout of the monument have no exact parallels to date. Translation: we have no idea what we're looking at. When archaeologists can't find parallels in their own region, they look elsewhere. And that's where things get strange. The closest architectural matches aren't in Greece, they're in the Middle East, Mesopotamia, Syria, Oman. Bronze Age circular structures from early urban civilizations, thousands of miles away from Crete. There are also faint similarities to Proto-Helladic Cyclopean buildings on mainland Greece, massive stone constructions, and to Tholos tombs, beehive-shaped burial chambers used for elite burials in southern Crete during the pre-palatial and proto-palatial periods. But none of these comparisons fit perfectly. The Papura structure is too big to be a tomb, too elaborate to be a dwelling, too remote to be a palace. The design is unique, first of its kind excavated in Crete. Maria Vlazaki, an archaeologist with expertise in the Minoan era and former general secretary at Greece's Ministry of Culture, confirmed it. Nothing like this has ever been unearthed before. So what was it used for? The excavation is ongoing, but the artifacts are telling a story. Inside the central zones, Zone A and Zone B, archaeologists found pottery fragments, late Minoan sherds, middle Minoan ceramics, layers of use spanning centuries. The earliest pottery dates to around 2000 to 1700 BC. That's the Proto-Palatial period, right when the first Minoan palaces were being constructed. But it's the other finds that reveal the site's true function. Animal bones, massive quantities of animal bones, concentrated in the inner rings, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs. These weren't butchered for a family meal. The sheer volume suggests organized feasting, community gatherings, large-scale consumption, and consumption paired with ritual. The bones weren't scattered randomly, they were clustered, deposited in specific areas, near the narrow openings, near the central chamber. This is the archaeological signature of sacrifice, of offerings. The structure wasn't lived in. There are no hearths, no storage rooms, no domestic debris, no signs of permanent habitation. It was used periodically, seasonally, for specific events, gatherings where food and wine were consumed, where animals were slaughtered, where offerings were made. To what? To whom? The structure predates the great Minoan palaces. It comes from a time when Crete was transitioning from scattered agricultural communities to centralized political power. Clans, chieftains, early rulers asserting dominance. The location reinforces this, the summit of a hill, visible from the entire plain, a monument that announces presence, power, control. The effort required to build it was enormous, moving thousands of tons of stone, shaping it, stacking it, maintaining perfect circular geometry. That requires resources, labor, organization, a central authority. Dr. Contepoti's interpretation: its construction would have required considerable resources, specialized knowledge, and a centralized authority to oversee the project, all hallmarks of a sophisticated civilization. This wasn't a village project, it was a statement, and the statement was made through ritual, through collective feasting, through the controlled slaughter of animals in a labyrinthine temple on top of a sacred hill. And then there's the elephant in the room, or rather, the bull, the Minotaur. Greek mythology is specific. King Minos ruled Crete. His wife, Pasiphae, cursed by the gods, gave birth to a creature, half man, half bull, the Minotaur. To hide the abomination, Minos commissioned Daedalus, the master craftsman, to build a labyrinth, an impossible maze so complex that anyone who entered would be lost forever. Every 9 years, Athens sent 7 young men and 7 young women as tribute. They were thrown into the labyrinth, fed to the beast, until Theseus, the hero, volunteered. With the help of Minos' daughter Ariadne, who gave him a ball of thread, Theseus entered the maze, killed the Minotaur, followed the thread back out, and escaped. For centuries, scholars treated this as pure myth, allegory, symbolism. There was no labyrinth, there was no Minotaur. It was just a story to explain the fall of Minoan Crete to Mycenaean Greece. But now we have an actual labyrinth on Crete from the Minoan period, with evidence of ritual animal slaughter. The parallels are impossible to ignore. Does that mean the Minotaur was real? Of course not. But it suggests the myth was rooted in something real. The labyrinth at Papura Hill might not be the labyrinth from the story. The myth says the labyrinth was underground, at Knossos. The Papura structure is on a hilltop, near Castelli, different location. But myths evolve, details shift, stories get retold, locations get confused. What if the core truth behind the Minotaur myth wasn't a single underground maze? What if it was the Minoan practice of building circular ritual structures where bulls were sacrificed? What if multiple labyrinths existed across Crete, and the myth collapsed them into one? The Minoans worshipped the bull. Bull imagery is everywhere. Frescoes, seals, sculptures, bull-leaping ceremonies, the famous horns of consecration. The bull represented power, fertility, divine strength. At Knossos, they found massive quantities of bull bones. Ritual sacrifice, the same pattern we're seeing at Papura. And here's the kicker. The word labyrinth itself might come from the Minoan language. Scholars suggest it derives from labris, the double-headed axe, a sacred symbol of Minoan religion. The palace of Knossos was called the House of the Double Axe. The labyrinth might not have originally meant maze. It might have meant sacred place of the axe, a temple complex. The discovery at Papura Hill forces us to reconsider the line between myth and history. Maybe the Greeks who wrote down the Minotaur story 1,000 years after the Minoans fell were preserving a cultural memory, a distorted, dramatized, monster-filled version of real Minoan rituals, real architectural marvels, real labyrinths where real bulls were killed in the name of real gods. But there's a modern twist to this ancient story. And it's not a happy one. The Papura Labyrinth was discovered during construction of the new Heraklion International Airport. The airport is a massive project, expected to handle 10 million passengers annually by 2027. The radar system that uncovered the labyrinth? It's essential for aviation safety. Without it, there's a 24-second gap in radar coverage. Planes can't land safely. After the discovery, officials held an emergency meeting. Minister of Culture, Lina Mendoni. Deputy Minister of Infrastructure and Transport, Nikos Tahiaos. Representatives from the Ministry of Defense. The question was simple. What do we do? Initially, they announced a compromise. Relocate the radar, preserve the site, continue excavation. But as of late 2024, that promise is crumbling. Civil aviation authorities reviewed 200 alternative locations. Every single one left gaps in radar coverage. The conclusion? Papura Hill is the only safe location. Now the plan is to build the radar tower, directly next to the monument, on the same hilltop, right beside a 4,000-year-old irreplaceable archaeological treasure, the one that won the 2024 Palmyra Prize for Best Archaeological Discovery of the Year. Minister Mendoni told Greek Parliament in July 2024 that the final plan would protect the monument and ensure flight security. But archaeologists are skeptical. Dimitris Plansos, a professor of classical archaeology at the University of Athens, called it out. The Papura Hill controversy is an emblematic case, a major Minoan monument directly threatened by the airport radar installation, with relocation proposals dismissed in the name of protecting the project's sacred timeline. The excavation is ongoing, but it's being conducted under pressure, under deadlines, under the shadow of a construction project that won't wait. Every day, archaeologists spend digging as a day the airport falls behind schedule. This is the battle playing out across Greece: economic development versus cultural preservation, tourism infrastructure versus ancient heritage. Crete draws millions of visitors every year. The new airport will make travel easier, more efficient. But what's the point of making it easier to visit Crete if we're destroying the very history people come to see? And the irony is brutal. We're building an airport to bring tourists to Crete's ancient wonders while simultaneously bulldozing those wonders to make room for the airport. The Papura Labyrinth has one more secret, and this one might be the most unsettling. The structure wasn't abandoned peacefully. The destruction layer tells a story. Neopalatial pottery. Shattered. Scattered. Evidence of fire. Burnt wood remains discovered beneath massive fallen stones. Something violent happened here. Around 1450 BC, the same time the Minoan palaces collapsed. Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, all destroyed, some by earthquake, some by fire, some by invasion. The leading theory is the Mycenaeans, Greek-speaking, warriors from the mainland. They swept through Crete, conquered the island, burned the palaces, ended Minoan civilization. The Papura Labyrinth, already ancient by then, used for over 500 years, was caught in the collapse. Or maybe it wasn't conquest. Maybe it was the Thera eruption, the volcanic explosion on Santorini around 1600 BC, one of the largest eruptions in human history. It sent tsunamis crashing into Crete's northern coast. Ash clouds blotted out the sun, crops failed, the Minoan economy shattered, and within a generation their civilization crumbled. Either way, the labyrinth fell silent. The rituals stopped, the feasts ended, the animal bones stopped piling up, and the structure was buried, slowly, over centuries. Dirt, vegetation, erosion. Until 2024, when a bulldozer brought it back into the light. The excavation continues. Archaeologists are racing against the clock, documenting, mapping, preserving what they can. But there's a question nobody wants to ask out loud. What if we don't finish in time? What if the construction moves forward before we understand what this place really was? What if the radar tower gets built and we lose access to the site forever? Linear A, the Minoan script, remains undeciphered. We can't read their language. We don't know what they called this place. We don't know what prayers they spoke here. We don't know what gods they worshipped. Every stone we excavate is a clue. Every bone is a data point. Every fragment of pottery is a piece of the puzzle. But puzzles take time, and time is the one thing this excavation doesn't have. So here's the question. Do you think the Minotaur myth was based on a real place? And does discovering that place matter if we're just going to destroy it for an airport? The Minoans built this labyrinth 4,000 years ago. It survived earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, invasions, climate change, millennia of erosion. It outlasted the civilization that created it. But can it survive? Us? Can it survive 21st century development priorities? Can it survive the pressure to build faster, expand quicker, modernize at any cost? Greek mythology warned us, the labyrinth is a trap. Once you enter, you can't escape. Maybe we've been inside it all along, trapped in a maze of our own making, where every decision to preserve the past conflicts with the demands of the present. where every archaeological discovery becomes a bureaucratic nightmare, where the same culture that gave us democracy forces us to choose between heritage and progress. Theseus had Ariadne's thread, a way out, a path back to safety. What's our thread? What leads us out of this maze? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this discovery fascinates you, hit that like button and subscribe. Because we're uncovering more ancient mysteries, more impossible finds, more truths buried in myth. You don't want to miss what we find next. Thanks for watching.